Although the Eikon is the new flagship of ZMF headphones, I feel that it is the Atticus that was built on the sound signature that the company was known for in the past. Comparing the Atticus to my first review of the ZMF Vibro Mark I, I feel that this is a super Vibro of sorts. This particular Atticus weighs 542 grams, but if you choose the Padauk version, you will see an increase of about 50 to 70 grams. The weight distribution is excellent, however, and these don't feel like they're weight at all, even when you have them on. I find that the air pads, which are specifically the ZMF Ori pads, provide ample cushioning and are able to seal very well on my head. So I used to own two ZMF Oris back in the day, and I would have trouble getting a good seal using those old ZMF pads, which are the lambskin ones, the cowhide ones, or protein ones, and etc. So just like the Eikon, this headphone isolates very well. I'm not able to hear the outside world when I have music playing at a moderate volume, so I have to be careful not to use these headphones during the day if I'm expecting somebody at the door, because I honestly won't hear the bell ring. Both ZMF dynamics are beautiful, using cherry and Padauk wood in their construction. The frame itself is very sturdy, and concerns that I have with the LCD2 creaking are nowhere to be found here. This is a headphone built to last. My only issue is that it takes a good amount of force to adjust the sliders. This is probably to prevent the weight of the air cuffs pulling them out of place. I still, however, prefer these rigid adjusters to the Fostex T50RPs though. These are not portable headphones. They don't fold and are definitely not driven from a smartphone. They are quite easily driven, however, being quite sensitive even though they're 300 ohms. So while the Eikon is a biocellulose driver, this uses a thermoplastic elastomer driver, and both headphones are a departure from the planar magnetic offerings that Zach built the company on. The cable connectors are the same, however, the ones that are also used by the Audeze LCD series, and I quite like these connectors as they aren't yanked out so easily like sometimes on my Elear with the 3.5mm connector, because there's a locking mechanism on this, and to release it you have to press that little button that you see on the connector itself. So let's get to the sound. So I feel like the Atticus is a super Vibro because the entry-level wooden cup ZMF headphone is tuned to be uncompromisingly fun and mid-bassy. I remember that I used to have a bass port adjustment system to fine-tune bass according to the listener's preferences, and I'd usually have it at 1 or 2 inside at the time. The Atticus has no such adjustment method and fires on all fronts by default. This can be controlled a bit with amp pairings, but more on that later. The tone of the Atticus is very lush. I've spent a long time deciding whether or not I prefer to the liquid mid-range of the Hi-Fi-Man HD800, and I would say it's a very close race. The Atticus' sound makes the Eikon look a little more clinical, analytical, and reserved by comparison. This headphone wears its colored sound signature on its sleeve, and it has no regrets in doing so. The bass will undoubtedly be the first thing people will notice when they put these on for the first time. I love a nice amount of bass, and this headphone is no slouch in that regard. It does not dive as deep in the sub-bass region as the Eikon does, but has a more pronounced mid-bass jump that really is one of the two tuning methods that define this headphone overall. There is an impressive amount of bass slam, which has strong impact and punchiness. The punchy bass is not extremely fast in transients, but holds its own in genres that require fast double bass drum patterns and so on. I find the bass to be very clean sounding, but to truly achieve this you'll need an amp pairing which can provide a clean transition into the mid-range. The mid-range of the Atticus, like I said before, is very lush and smooth. I mentioned in my Eikon review that the flagship seemed to have opted for a more textured mid-range, while the Atticus went for more body and sheen instead. The full-bodied and smooth mid-range make vocals a treat to listen to, if they are well recorded. The lower mid-range has good presence, so male vocals and acoustic guitars are tonally sound and rich in presentation. The upper mid-range is a little dipped, however, but not as dipped as the Focal Elear where it feels like an actual hole in there, and female vocals sound full-bodied and clear rather than distant. The soundstage is quite intimate, and I would actually put it down to like on the level of the Focal Utopia or the Sennheiser HD650. This does not detract from regular listening, however, But switching between this and the Eikon shows that the latter handles micro detail and separation in a superior manner. A benefit of moving away from the Fostex T50RP drivers is that the treble of both the Atticus and the Eikon sound very natural to me and not hard at all. The Atticus's treble never has reached a point to me where I would consider it sibilant, harsh, or even fatiguing. It's very comfortably rolled, but not quite choked. Songs that sound like oral masochism on the Sennheiser HD800 sound just fine to me on the Atticus. So let's talk about genre pairings. The Atticus does really well with vocals, pop music, and electronic genres. Anything that is cleanly recorded and has a drive to it will bring out its ability to showcase its dynamic nature. Now the problem comes with listening to classic rock tracks like Pink Floyd, which are better heard on a headphone with more detail retrieval due to the music's somewhat even and steady pacing with immense layering. Sure, the vocals will sound sublime, but the Atticus's bass performance will struggle, for you don't really want an accentuated bass line or kick drum when listening to Pink Floyd, do you? That being said, it's not so bad a pairing that I would toss it off my head completely. It's just not the most ideal. If you want a headphone for psychedelic classic rock, I would steer you towards the Eikon instead. So let's talk about amp pairings. So I would go so far as to say that this is the second most important part of the review after my description of the sound. Like the Eikon, the Atticus is revealing of source care but can sound really off from the wrong pairing. So in all these comparisons, I use a shit Gungner multi-bit out of all the following amps. Starting with the Audio GD NFB28, this is a very powerful DAC and amplifier combination that has a somewhat neutral sound to the amp section. It has good control of the Atticus's bass, but I did find a problem with its pairing with the Gungner. The combination felt kind of hazy to me, and the headphones, and this doesn't seem really ideal. But when I switched to the NFB28's own DAC, the Saber DAC, I found it to have a blacker background when combined with its own amplifier, but it sounded very digital and not as natural as what I'm used to with the Gumby, which is short for Gungner Multibit, by the way, and the separation also took a slight hit. So, on to the liquid carbon. Now, followers of my videos will notice that I have not recommended the Cavalli liquid carbon in recent reviews in terms of most ideal pairings. This is because it has a warm and laid-back sound that can be overkill on some headphones. With the Eikon, this simply made it a more laid-back headphone, easing up a bit on the intense dynamic nature of the headphone and adding a bit more warmth to the mid-range. With the LCD2, it simply became too warm, and I felt that some of the details in the treble region were being masked. With the Atticus, the bass becomes simply way too much. I enjoy a bassy sound, but the Atticus, out of the right pairings, couples that with a smooth mid-range and treble. With the liquid carbon, it becomes all about the bass and lower mids, leading to a pronounced bleed that holds back any song that I throw at it. So when I first plugged into the shit Valhalla 2 with the Atticus, it was a mini revelation of sorts. The Valhalla 2 controlled the Atticus in a manner that the NFB28 was not able to. It made the overall experience a bit drier and a bit leaner, which are not bad additions to the Atticus's sound in my opinion. Suddenly, there was more detail, and the bass was not as intruding into the mid-range as much before. More importantly, the staging became slightly wider and the separation became more pronounced. I would go so far to say that this is a grand amplifier and headphone pairing, with the only detraction being a lack of punchiness. Because the Valhalla 2, while still being punchy, did not provide enough oomph for the Atticus to be realizing what it's capable of. Was it natural but clean? Yeah, absolutely. Did it make instruments and vocals sit better in a mix with these headphones? Yes, definitely. But my time using the NFB28 has shown me just how the Atticus's bass should work. And the Valhalla 2 had characteristics that I couldn't enjoy on the Audio GD, so I needed to find another option. Now, this is where we enter with the shit Elear 2. Now, this is a hybrid tube and solid state amplifier, and I have several tube sets for this, and I've been trying them all out, and I'll tell you my favorite in a minute. I don't have the list tubes, however, which apparently make this into a solid state amplifier. I believe they're out of stock in shit UK right now, so I'll try them at a later date, and then maybe I'll put a little update in the description. But this amplifier is my favorite pairing of all the amplifiers that I have with the Atticus. The Elear 2 is absurdly punchy and dynamic, even blazing well past the Audio GD NFB28 in this regard. Its treble is a tad harder and less natural sounding than the Valhalla 2, however, and it is brighter out of its stock 6BZ7 tubes. Yeah, the bass is very controlled though, which is great for the Atticus, and the mid-range is heavily dependent on the tubes used. So I personally prefer the Genelex Gold Lions overall, despite it being slightly warmer than the others that I have, but it doesn't intrude on the Atticus's ability at all. In fact, it heightens its smooth and inviting mid-range characteristics, and snare hits feel like they have more depth to them, with a slight bit of reverb that gives it more of a live sound. Compared to the Valhalla 2, the soundstage is a bit narrower on the Elear 2. Out of all the tubes that I use with the Elear 2, the punchiness is preserved and the highs feel more natural than with the NFB28, cementing this as my go-to amplifier for the Atticus currently. So I'm really glad I was able to compare several amplifiers with these headphones, and I really could not imagine just hearing it from a single amplifier and judging it completely based on that, or even two amplifiers. This really you need to experiment to find the right sound that the Atticus can provide. Now on to headphone comparisons. So, I feel like I have to repeat myself in every review when it comes to the HD800, regarding its vast soundstage and all that. It beats all headphones that I've compared recently in terms of soundstage. Even the Sennheiser HE1 Orpheus could not match it in that regard. So the HD800 versus a closed headphone like the Atticus, I'm pretty sure you can do the math. The well-known analytical nature of the HD800 makes it a good headphone to complement the Atticus actually, if you want two headphones that cover both ends of the spectrum. It provides intense detail and air at the cost of being a little anemic in its mid-range and muted in its bass performance. Unlike the Eikon, which takes some of the strengths of the HD800 and wraps it in Zach's tuning, which emphasizes natural tonality and a live sound, the Atticus prefers to be a little bit easier on the airs and not peaky in its treble. Its warmth is its selling point, so I feel a bit awkward saying obvious things like the HD800 is more detailed overall, which it just simply is. What I prefer of the two depends on my mood and the genre that I'm listening to. The Atticus is definitely a headphone that is instantly impressive to those who aren't in the hobby though, and are not striving for that micro-detailed sound which is sometimes called plankton nowadays, and just want to hear a clear sound with great bass. Now I'm not saying that the Atticus is a super beat solo 2, by no means I'm not saying that, but it has a far different sound signature than the HD800, and I'm able to listen to more genres on the Atticus than the HD800. And female vocals, by the way, have more presence and body on the ZMF headphones than they do on the HD800, where they fall a little bit into the dip that it has in the upper mid-range. Weight and comfort-wise, I have to give it to the HD800 actually, because despite the weight distribution on both ZMF Dynamics being really excellent, the HD800 is just so much lighter, about 180 grams lighter in fact. So the Atticus is 542 grams, while the HD800 is 362 grams, both without cables. If you require isolation though, you should definitely just go for the Atticus of the two. A few weeks ago, I completed and uploaded my Audeze LCD2 review, a headphone that I quite like and I felt had an edge in detail retrieval to the Atticus, despite being considerably more laid back and less punchy in its sound signature. Since then, I've discovered the most important final pieces of the puzzle that is evaluating the Atticus, which are the two shit amplifiers that I have prefer as a pairing. So does it change anything and everything about my impressions? No, not exactly. The LCD2 is still a headphone that is smooth, laid back, and comprised of some shimmering detail in its treble. However, although I like the Atticus more in my weeks-old comparison overall, it's widened its lead now. I'm able to get more out of it now thanks to these amplifiers that I have gotten since then. The Focal Elear. Now the Focal headphones are better all-rounders than the Atticus in my opinion, if you like their specific sound signature and presentation enough. They also mask their source quite well and sound like themselves out of most headphones amplifiers that I've paired them with. They're also quite a bit faster than the Atticus and are so dynamic sounding even at low to moderate listening volume that you will get the full effect of sudden events in your audio. Where the Atticus hits back, however, and really hard by the way, is in its mid-range. The Elear, while possessing a mid-range that is excellent for pianos and electric guitars, it's not so suitable for vocals in my opinion, especially female vocals that fall right into the area where it is heavily dipped. Also, the Elear has an aggressive mid-range that is not especially lush or smooth, which are both characteristics of the Atticus. I would even use the term shouty for the focal mid-range, and some others I know have called it grainy. However, it is definitely a headphone that handles rock and metal far better of all the headphones that I have currently. So both have excellent weight distribution, but the focal is approximately 100 grams lighter, so you can keep that in mind if that's a consideration for you. Both are quite intimate soundstage though. The Eikon, the elder brother of the Atticus, is near identical in looks and comfort, depending on wood choice. Utilizing a biocellulose driver, the Eikon is tuned to be more of a reference headphone than the warmer Atticus. I have heard that the Eikon is described as warm out of certain sources, and the liquid carbon is definitely one of them, but is still far more neutral and straightforward in presentation compared to the Atticus. So do I think the Eikon is a better headphone? Yes, I do. The reason for this is that it merges a fun sound signature that Zach really likes to tune his headphones to, with a more analytical and detailed touch to make it quite revealing of both source gear and music production and mastering. Its sub-bass extends lower than the Atticus, which is more focused on mid-bass punch, and its mid-range possesses a lot more texture. The soundstage is also a little wider to my ears than the Atticus. The treble extension is more pronounced, with horns and stringed instruments possessing quite a bit of air compared to the Atticus. The Eikon, I feel, is also tuned to be more tonally accurate than the Atticus, which injects warmth and a little bloom into everything it touches instead. So, what do I reach for if I want to listen to some electropop? Definitely the Atticus. What do I reach for when I want to listen to some smooth jazz? I reach for the Eikon. These two headphones are so distinct that I feel that they cater to two different kinds of listeners in the hobby quite well. Indeed, you can own both these headphones and find yourself listening to them equally as much if you have a vast array of tastes in musical genres. The Eikon is smooth, but the Atticus is smoother, and I'm yet to hear a track where I feel that the treble is too piercing on it. The Eikon can actually sound a little too harsh up top with some poorly mastered tracks, and I'm told that there are slightly audible differences in the wood choice, but I can't confirm this myself, because I only have a cherry Atticus and a Padauk Eikon. So, in the months since my Eikon review, I found myself listening to the Atticus more and more. It's matched my genre preferences these days quite well, and I'm a little addicted to the smooth mid-range and punchy bass. I'm absolutely sure that I've used the words smooth and punchy several times in this review, but those really are the two front and foremost aspects of this headphone. Returning to my earlier statement about the Atticus being a true considered continuation of the ZMF house sound of the past, yes, I do believe this is a super ZMF Vibro, but I am very glad that Zach took the initiative to explore another tuning for the Eikon, one that is done incredibly well and will move the brand's known house sound forward. But does this mean that the Atticus is a glimpse into the past? No, not at all, because there will always be people who prefer this sound signature to a more reference sound, or people who want a headphone for the times where they just want to be jamming out and not listening to every detail across the map of a song recording. So with these two options now available, it's better to review the release of both as a twosome rather than an individual headphone. Aspects one could argue are missing in the Atticus are present in the Eikon, and vice versa. Buying both is an expense, but with so many top-of-the-line headphones costing more than both of these headphones combined, you could get, and they possess just a single sound signature too, so I wouldn't be surprised if someone tried both of these headphones at an event and then opted for both. These are incredibly well-built headphones that tap into the areas of a listening experience that are instantly pleasing, which are bass and mid-range. They effectively remove any possibility of sibilance, but not so much the listener feels choked by the lack of treble. They are responsive to amp pairings, and I would personally recommend a lean, dry, and analytical amplifier with them to bring out more of the mid-range and control the bass further. So kudos to Zach for his first two in-house creations being quite distinct and quite excellent in their own right. So that has been my review of the ZMF Atticus, and I will see you next time. Cheers.